exposing the terror in the unknown. The night was thick with an eerie mist, the kind that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows, each tree a towering sentinel, guarding secrets best left undiscovered. The moon, hidden behind a veil of clouds, offered no comfort, only adding to the oppressive darkness that seemed to swallow everything whole. Emma's drive through the forest on a rainy night was about to turn chilling. The rain pounded on her windshield as Emma drove deeper into the forest. Each drop sounded like a drumbeat, a relentless reminder of the isolation that surrounded her. The wipers struggled to keep up, smearing the rain rather than clearing it, making the road ahead a blur of dark shapes and fleeting shadows. The forest seemed alive, the trees whispering secrets to each other, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands trying to grasp her car. Her phone had lost signal hours ago, and the trees seemed to close in around her. The GPS was useless, the screen displaying a mocking, no-signal message. Emma felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. She was alone, truly alone, with no way to call for help if something went wrong. The road, once a clear path, now felt like a tunnel, the dense foliage on either side pressing in, making her feel trapped. The headlights barely pierced the darkness, revealing only the immediate stretch of road before her, while the rest remained shrouded in mystery. A flash of lightning revealed an old, broken-down house by the road. It stood like a specter, its silhouette stark against the brief illumination. The house was a relic of a bygone era, its once grand structure now a decaying shell. The windows were dark, like empty eye sockets, and the roof sagged under the weight of years of neglect. The sight of it sent a shiver down Emma's spine, but with the storm growing fiercer, she knew she had little choice but to seek shelter. With her gaslight flickering, she knew she had no choice. The needle hovered dangerously close to empty, and the nearest town was miles away. She pulled up the driveway, the gravel crunching under her tires, and parked in front of the house. The rain was relentless, soaking her to the bone as she stepped out of the car. She hesitated for a moment, her instincts screaming at her to turn back, but desperation pushed her forward. She walked up to the door, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Against her better judgment, she pulled up the driveway and knocked. Silence. The sound of her knuckles against the wood was swallowed by the storm. She waited, her heart pounding in her chest, but there was no response. She knocked again, harder this time, and still, there was nothing. Just as she was about to turn away, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a dark, foreboding interior. Then, the door creaked open. Inside, it was like a scene from an old horror film, dusty, cobweb-covered, abandoned. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. The furniture, once elegant, was now draped in sheets of dust, and the wallpaper peeled away in long, curling strips. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly drapes, and the floorboards creaked under her weight. It was as if time had stopped in this place, leaving it to rot and wither away. She stepped in, and the door slammed shut, locking her in. The sound was deafening, echoing through the empty halls. Emma's heart raced as she tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. She was trapped. Panic set in, but she forced herself to stay calm. She needed to find another way out. As she turned to explore the house, she heard it. Heavy footsteps echoing from upstairs. They were slow and deliberate, each step sending a jolt of fear through her. Heavy footsteps echoed from upstairs. They were unmistakable, the sound of someone, or something, moving above her. Emma's mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. She considered calling out, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she decided to follow the sound, hoping to find whoever, or whatever, was making it. She moved cautiously, her eyes darting around the dimly lit room, every shadow a potential threat. Trembling, she followed them to a winding staircase. At the top, a long, dark hallway awaited. The stairs creaked with each step, the sound amplified in the silence. The hallway was even darker, the only light coming from a single flickering bulb at the far end. The walls were lined with old portraits, their eyes seeming to follow her as she moved. Emma felt a chill run down her spine, but she pressed on, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. One door was slightly ajar, a faint glow seeping out. It was the only source of light in the otherwise pitch-black hallway. Emma approached it cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. The light was strange, not the warm glow of a lamp, but something colder, more unnatural. As she got closer, she could hear a faint humming sound, like the buzz of electricity. She reached out a trembling hand and pushed the door open wider. As she approached, the door creaked open wider. The room beyond was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was filled with old, dusty furniture, but there was something off about it. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, and the light seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Emma stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of life. That's when she saw them, the portraits with moving eyes, watching her every move. Inside, portraits with moving eyes watched her every move. They were old, their frames ornate and covered in dust, but the eyes were alive, tracking her as she moved through the room. Emma felt a wave of nausea wash over her. It was as if the house itself was watching her, judging her. She tried to ignore the feeling, focusing instead on finding a way out. But the eyes were relentless, their gaze piercing and unyielding. In the center, a small, dusty mirror reflected a twisted grin that wasn't her own. The mirror was old, its surface tarnished and covered in grime, but the reflection was clear. Emma stared at it, her own face staring back at her, but with a twisted, malevolent grin. She felt a chill run down her spine as the reflection began to change, morphing into something grotesque and unrecognizable. It whispered to her, its voice a raspy hiss, "You shouldn't have come here." Her reflection morphed into something grotesque, whispering, "You shouldn't have come here." Everything spun. The room seemed to close in on her, the walls warping and twisting. Emma felt dizzy, her vision blurring as the oppressive energy of the house pressed down on her. She stumbled back, her mind racing with fear and confusion. She needed to get out, but the door was gone, replaced by a solid wall. Panic set in, and she felt herself slipping into darkness. Suddenly, she was outside next to her car. The house was gone. Emma blinked, trying to make sense of what had just happened. One moment she was trapped inside the house, and the next she was standing in the rain, her car parked in front of her. The house, the portraits, the mirror, it was all gone, as if it had never existed. She felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was quickly replaced by a lingering sense of dread. Something wasn't right. Heart pounding, she sped off. But as she glanced in the rearview mirror, her reflection still wasn't her own. The twisted grin was back, staring at her with malevolent eyes. Emma's heart raced as she tried to focus on the road, but the reflection was relentless, its gaze burning into her. She drove faster, desperate to escape, but the reflection followed her, a constant reminder of the terror she had just experienced. The night was far from over, and Emma knew that the haunted house had left its mark on her, a mark that she would never be able to escape.